Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. If you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. They're doing ratings on Spotify now, so you can go give us 5 stars over there if you're one of the few people that listen to us on Spotify. That would be great. Let's dive in for some Hawkeye Season 1 talk. Joining me today, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
I'm doing quite fantastic, thank you.
Excellent. Glad to have you for this
Oh,
one.
sorry. What's going on, nerds? My bad.
There you go.
It's been a long week. I apologize.
It has indeed a long holiday week. But yes, we're going to be talking all about Hawkeye Season 1. So we're going to be diving into full spoilers or potential full spoilers for the first season of Hawkeye. So if you are not caught up or you've not watched or anything like that, you might want to hold off on the rest of this episode until a later time. Obviously, we did. Frank and I sat down and discussed the first couple episodes back when they came out. And as part of our holiday month, we've been doing kind of holiday themed content every week here. And we did the Santa Claus 2, we did Home Alone 2 Lost New York, we did Jingle All the Way. And then when I was trying to figure out what to do for this fourth week before we do Book of Boba Fett next week, I just kind of was like, you know what? They've set Hawkeye at the holidays. We'll just do a full holiday, full Hawkeye wrap up, tie in that sweet SEO with our holiday themed month here. So that's what we're doing. We're wrapping up season 1 of Hawkeye because that just came out. So a little bit of history lesson here. Obviously, Hawkeye Season 1 originally released here November 24th, 2021 through December 22nd, 2021. Episodes averaged usually a runtime of 50-ish minutes. In the MCU timeline of things, we had Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings came out in September of 2021. What If came out August through October. The Eternals came out November 5th. Hawkeye, as I said, came out November through December here. We also just had Spider-Man No Way Home that came out December 17th that Cameron, myself, and Frank all got to sit down and enjoy together. We also sat down and recorded a spoiler cast over on That Nerdy Site show. If you want to go check that out, you can. Up next in the MCU moving forward, we have Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness coming out in May of 2022. And then the next TV projects currently slated in the MCU are Moon Knight and She-Hulk, TBD 2022, as well as, I don't have it slated in terms of a time frame, but I'm pretty sure it's also coming out next year, the Echo series based off of Maya's character from Hawkeye here, Echo.
That's going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
Considering how the season ends things.
Indeed. So a little bit is going to be a repeat from what Frank and I discussed a few weeks ago with our first kind of pair of episodes, but I will kind of provide some updates here. The directors, I think I originally on that first episode thought it was going to be the same director all throughout. It was not. It was the season was split between 2 different directors, or technically 3 directors. But which is I think a first for the live action Disney Plus Marvel stuff that we've had so far. Like all the WandaVision stuff was directed by one person. I believe all the Falcon and Winter Soldier was directed by the same person. And then all of Loki was directed by the same person. So yeah, this is I think the first time we've switched things up. Episodes 1, 2, and the finale here, episode 6, were directed by Rhys Thomas, who we talked about in that first episode. He had a lot of SNL directing experience, as well as he'd worked with John Mulaney on The Comeback Kid and Sack Lunch Bunch specials. But then the middle run of episodes 3, 4, and 5 were directed by the duo of Bert and Bertie, who one of their biggest projects out there is Troop Zero, I believe an Amazon original movie from a few years ago, starring a younger McKenna Grace, who just lit up the screens as the young girl in Ghostbusters Afterlife this year. The writer, series head writer, was Jonathan Igla, who prior to this had done a handful of Mad Men episodes, but not a ton outside of that. The starring, of course, we have Jeremy Renner as Clint Barton / Hawkeye, who's been playing Hawkeye since Thor in 2011. He was also in The Hurt Locker, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, The Bourne Legacy, and Arrival. We have, of course, Haley Steinfeld playing Kate Bishop, who kind of made a claim to fame in True Grit, as well as Pitch Perfect 2 and 3, The Edge of 17, Bumblebee, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and then most recently she has been also in tearing up the streaming space. In addition to Hawkeye, she's been in Dickinson over on Apple Plus, as well as Arcane over on Netflix. Vera Farmiga playing Eleanor Bishop, previously from The Departed, Up in the Air, The Conjuring, and the Bates Motel series. Tony Dalton as Jack Duquesne, probably best known to fans of Better Call Saul as Lalo Salamanca. Laqua Cox playing Maya Lopez / Echo here. As I touched on last time around, this is pretty much her debut. But she will also be starring in the Echo Disney Plus series out next year. Florence Pugh makes her return to the MCU as Yelena Belova. She had I just want to highlight these next 3 movies, all from 2019, meaning she had like a pretty stellar 2019, Fighting with My Family, Midsummer, and Little Women. And then, of course, as I mentioned, she was in Black Widow earlier this year. Fra Free playing Kazi Kazimierczyk. I'm sure I mispronounced that name. His first project was the 2012 production of Les Mis. And he was also in this year's Cinderella that came out on Amazon. I really enjoyed him in this as Kazi.
I did too. Kazi was an interesting character throughout the entire show.
Yeah. Fun little kind of performance here from Linda Cardellini as Laura Barton. Of course, known from Freaks and Geeks, as Velma in the Scooby-Doo live action movies, Brokeback Mountain, and she has been in the MCU since the Age of Ultron movie in 2015. And as teased at the end of last week's episode and cemented in the finale here, Vincent D'Onofrio playing Kingpin, or making his return as Kingpin, rather. Of course, iconically Edgar from Men in Black. He had a long-running stint on Law & Order Criminal Intent, and he has technically been playing Wilson Fisk since Daredevil in 2015. Kind of bringing Daredevil characters back into the fold. A little bit of trivia, largely I think pretty much pulled from the finale episode here. During the fight between Kate and Yelena, they fight in an office labeled Tanner, Dees and Associates. That is a nod to Tanner Bean, who is one of the writers and executive story editor of the show, as well as Courtney Dees, who's a set decorating production assistant. I always enjoy
Courtney D's nuts.
Thank you, Cameron. I'm sure
if I didn't say it, the audience everywhere
she's
would
never
have.
heard that. I mean, I feel like the audience didn't have to have said that.
I feel like they would have, though, Trevor. I feel like they would have.
I don't know. I don't know if Michael Ruiz listens to our stuff, since he's the only one I see regularly making that reference online these days.
You don't watch enough streamers, and you don't watch enough good YouTube content. That's what I'm going to put out there. There's nothing better than just a quick slide in on that D's nuts jokes.
Sure, Cameron. The trick shot that Clint pulls against Kazi, splitting an arrow in half with another arrow, is a callback to a conversation from earlier in the season when he and Kate were talking, and Kate basically said it couldn't be done. I personally love that moment I love that moment, the aftermath of it, of Kazi catching the arrow, saying, "Nice shot," and then just Clint just dismissing it, being like, "Yeah, no shit." because he's Hawkeye. He's Clint Barton. Of course, he was a nice shot.
It's just such a good moment because he's like, nice shot, like he's this badass, and then Clint's just like, no shit.
Yeah. The cufflinks that caused the downfall of Kingpin in his fight with Kate are a callback to his time and arcs among the Daredevil series, where he wore them in honor of his father. That's what the trivia thing said, and I'm like, wait, didn't he have like a very tragic relationship with his father? And I'm pretty sure that's
more. But that was part of the point.
But yeah, like, it was like he was doing it basically in spite of his father's memory, I think.
Yeah, it's like in honoring his father, and it's like, well, in honoring how much he like hated his father. Yeah.
The Kingpin Maya relationship is a nod to their story in the comics, where Kingpin led Maya to believe that Daredevil, not Ronin, had killed her father, or had been the cause of killing the father. But it was pretty much Kingpin, or as is the case in this series, Kingpin basically like called the hit. So yeah.
Well, it's he gave Kazi the direction to tip off Ronin.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was less of like a calculated hit where he like did that, so much as he put the right places in the right pieces in the right places to make sure that he got the outcome he wanted, because it's Kingpin.
Yes. The watch MacGuffin that Clint gives Laura at the end of the series here included the SHIELD logo and the number 19. Agent 19 is historically the code name for Bobby Morse, aka Mockingbird, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, seemingly alluding to the fact that, or to the revelation that Laura was once Mockingbird. Now, there's like a minor conflict within the MCU of this, because there was Adrian Pilecki of Friday Night Lights played Bobby Morse on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. In a couple of the early seasons before kind of being spun off. She was supposed to be spun off into her own series that ultimately did not get picked up. But the character of Bobby Morse / Mockingbird already exists, so maybe they're kind of playing with the idea of like, it's like a Bond code name kind of thing, and Laura Barton was also a Mockingbird of some sort.
Well, if she occupied the position of Agent 19, then whoever her successor would be, who's also Agent 19, would pick that up. That's not too uncommon within like spy stuff.
Yeah, no, it's more of like, it's how deep does this like reference go, really? Like, what does this confirm? Is Laura Barton's real name Bobby Morse, or were both people Mockingbirds and it was just a code name that kind of got carried? Like, it's all just it's a cool nod, and it seems to confirm like a fan theory that she was a Mockingbird, but like, is she Bobby, or what? Like, was she Bobby?
I don't think it really. I think the whole
doesn't really matter.
It's a MacGuffin. It's a MacGuffin. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
We were led to believe like this was like a secret like key to some Stark thing, and it turns out it's just his wife's watch.
Yep.
Which at the same time, how absolutely sweet of him to make sure he got her watch back for her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, what a great they don't get enough time together, man. I love them as a couple. Yeah. Like the acting, the entire situation with the two of them is just so fantastic. I adore it.
Yeah.
And like, they just have good chemistry, and the kids all have good chemistry with the parents. And it's like, what a home run on casting for this. It's just absolutely fantastic, man.
It's weird to think about. The youngest kid in this was basically the kid that was born at the time of Age of Ultron.
Yeah, that's it.
Like that's Nate. That's named after Nat. Named after not. Is one of them named after Nat, and the other one's named after Pietro? Or they have a middle. It probably has a middle name of Pietro or something like that. Because I think there was definitely a naming after Pietro in there from Age of Ultron, but. Yeah. No,
but he's Nathan. He's Nathan for Natasha. That's the kicker, because oh my gosh.
Yeah.
If it was in like, oh yeah, they were friends, it's like, no, you don't understand. They were best friends.
Yeah.
And God damn, did I love that?
Yeah.
Holy shit! This show does such an amazing job.
Yeah.
Of fleshing out Clint Barton's character in just the best way.
Indeed. Last little bit of trivia, and then we'll dive into some of our favorite moments and our conversation on the series as a whole. I touched on this a little bit in those first couple episodes because, of course, we got like the abbreviated version of it, kind of out the gate there. But the "Save the City" song from Rogers the Musical. That we
God
get
help me
as we get in its entirety as the like mid credits sequence here at the end of Hawkeye, was written by the duo of Scott Whitman and Mark Shaman, who wrote the Tony Award winning musical adaptation of Hairspray back in, I think, like 20 something, one of the early 20 movies.
Holy shit, that makes so much sense.
That
makes so much sense with how that production went. Oh my gosh, I love it now. I still hate it. It's still awful, but I love it.
They also wrote on the musical adaptations of Catch Me If You Can, as well as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And they also wrote the music for the NBC series Smash, which like within that had like, oh, they were writing a musical about Marilyn Monroe called Bombshell. And they basically wrote all of the music for a musical about Marilyn Monroe. And then most recently they wrote on they wrote some of the songs for Mary Poppins Returns, the film there. Shaman is also he's also playing the conductor in the full version of the song in that clip that we see at the end of the season. So yes, I meant to call that out. I knew that like when we talked about it in the first episode, but I forgot to call it out when I spoke about it with Frank. But yes, the musical number in here written. Not only does it feature musical heavyweights, I mentioned last time, basically the lead New Yorker that sings most of it, especially now that we get the full version of it, is Adam Pascal, who originated the role of Roger in Rent. So fitting that he's out there, also fronting Rogers the musical.
Man, dude, that musical, like I now that I know who was behind it, it's like, oh, I appreciate that you wrote an absolute trash music. Like, it is the most like atypical Broadway nonsense that never actually makes it to Broadway.
I would very much disagree. I would say this is very much what makes it to Broadway.
Not the Broadway shows I see, because I have
okay.
I'm joking because you, like, out of the two of us, you are much, much more dedicated to the theater than I am. I couldn't even say that with a straight face. It's like, there's no,
yeah.
No, I also like absolute trashy things. Like I want Spider-Man. What's that? The musical that like,
Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark.
Turn Off the Dark. Yeah. I love that kind. Like I mean,
if anything,
this is this. It's this kitschy, like, god awful nonsense, all based around I could do this all day, which is a thing he says twice in the first movie, and then once in the second movie, and that's it.
Yeah, and in Endgame, and that's like on this note in particular. I loved after the first episode kind of came out, people were coming up, spinning out these theories that the combination of the song being I Can Do This All Day, which isn't said in the first Avengers movie, and Ant-Man being in that fight, were leading all these people to be like, oh, like, does New York currently think that, like, the Battle of New York scenes that we get in Endgame, where like Ant-Man went back in time with them, like, do they think that's like historical kind of like reality or whatever? And I'm like, and they're like, so like, how did the multiverse spin out? I'm like, no, guys, it's the same way that like Hamilton takes liberties on like when those characters are interacting with one another or stuff like that, or the idea that Hamilton and Angelica had this like forbidden love, flirtation between them. There's no basis for it. It just makes a more interesting story. So there's no basis for Ant-Man being there, but it made a more interesting story or whatever for the fake Rogers the musical, the musical. And I Can Do This All Day was going to be catchy as hell. So,
dude, I actually like, that's the thing. I like, for me, the way I feel about that, I'm like, this is the most cringy, like over the top Broadway shtick. And I just can't stand it. And it's like, that's so crazy. Cause like there are like a dozen musicals that I love that do the same garbage. But for some reason I'm just like, I expect like I don't know if it's like, I expect more out of the MCU.
I mean,
or like whatever.
I mean, this very much, I think Frank and I talked about this a little bit too. Like, I mean, just from like the costume design of these characters, like this is very much like not trying to, like, it's almost like, hey, we're doing this with an off-Broadway budget or whatever. We're not putting a person in a giant bodysuit. We're giving him a sweatshirt and painting his face green so he can be the Hulk. And we're Tony's not wearing an Iron Man suit. He's just wearing kind of like a t-shirt and gonna like, we're gonna throw them on some wires. Like they're not like. I realized what characters or whatever.
I realized what I hate about. I just now realized what I hate about this, and like I'm like, there's stuff like this that I love, and I realized I'm like, this is like this is somebody who's not Star Kid trying to do a Star Kid production.
There you go. Yeah.
Like it's an off Star Kid production. That's the feel of it. Because I just realized the outfits reminded me of Batman, Holy Batman, the musical.
Holy Musical Batman, yeah.
Holy Musical Batman, yeah. It reminds me a lot of that because of the, kind of like we don't have money, like, for the big budget stuff. So the suits will be pajamas with, like...
T-shirts and the underwear over the pants. Like,
yeah, like,
do that, yeah.
That's the go to it. And, like, it's sold off of everything else. And I'm like, I get, like, now, okay. That's the feeling I'm getting. I'm like, there's something off about this. And it's like, oh, it's because it, like, I was expecting, it's like Rogers the Musical. I expected it to be like a big, serious production. And then we got that. And it's like, oh, but no, it's like the Star Kid thing. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, now that we've spent like, 5-10 minutes talking about the musical number of Hawkeye, let's talk about everything else about Hawkeye. What did you think? I definitely want to hear your thoughts first, in general, because obviously I talked with Frank about the first couple episodes, and we kind of talked last time we did a D+ episode on this about kind of where the show might go and stuff like that. You watched this, and you had watched the first 4 episodes, and then we all went and saw Spider-Man together. And Yelena had been introduced in episode 4, and I basically told you, like, yeah, you should probably watch Black Widow before you go and watch the rest of the episodes, which you did. You watched Black Widow, and then you came back and watched the last couple episodes. So yeah, with all of that like very fresh in your mind, what did you think about Hawkeye here?
This, to me, I think part of it has to do with the fact that Loki, the ending of Loki season 1 for me was. This is the problem, is that I had like avoided enough specific spoilery stuff, but the non-spoilery stuff had actually given me like, oh, it's going to be a much bigger deal of an ending than I was expecting, or that I expected a much bigger ending than what was given. Mm-hmm. And so I do have a bit of a fall off when it comes to my feelings on Loki. Like the last episode kind of like falls off for me, versus
that's fascinating because I love like. I mean, like,
no, don't get me wrong. Like, it's a good ending and it works, but like my expectations were, and I'm just gonna like this doesn't. I don't know if I should do any spoilers for it.
I mean, if you, it would be weird if you have watched Hawkeye. I mean, not that they're like tied directly, but I'm okay including Loki spoilers in this,
because this is not actually a spoiler. This is a spoiler because this doesn't happen. I thought Loki sacrificed his life to create the multiverse is what I thought happened.
Oh.
Like, as a god of mischief, he blew up the singular universe and gave us a vast multiverse as kind of like one final, like, FU to this idea of creation of control and like the idea of like the holy timeline thing. That was my impression going into it. Like, that was my theory by the time I got to the end. Basically, like, he's met the variants, they've changed him, because they did. He met the variants and they did change him and his outlook on things. Especially when he met, like, old Loki and and Kid Loki and stuff like that. And Effie?
Sylvie. Yeah.
Sylvie. So Sylvie, like, when it comes to that aspect of it, I look at that and think to myself, yeah, no, totally, 100%. I think that this is where it's going to go. And then it just doesn't do that. And it ends in a really great place. Like, it's very exciting. I'm very curious about what's going to happen going forward.
Yeah.
But that being said, because of that kind of like not what I was expecting and kind of like okay, so this wasn't like a big finale. It's just like it was a cliffhanger for next season. Okay. Because I thought Loki was going to be one and done.
Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of people did. That's like the mid-credits thing in Loki being Loki will be back for season 2 was like, especially because I think that came like right after like a big Disney announced a whole bunch of things kind of day, and then they basically like held off on that announcement to let it be kind of the big like oh shit moment from the end of Loki.
Yeah, so for me with Hawkeye though, I don't know if like my expectations were not too high for Hawkeye. I just hoped that it hit some like fun points and we got like I'm like, oh, if we get like a Die Hard like Clint Barton romp around New York City during Christmas time, that'd be cool. And he meets Kate Bishop and whatnot, and like Haley Steinfeld is just such an incredible actress. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure she'll nail Kate Bishop because her range is just so incredible. I've loved her since True Grit. Like, she's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And for that, like for her being in it, and I'm like, okay, cool. Oh, they're gonna do the tracksuit bros. Cool. The tracksuit mafia. All right, cool. Like, all right, let's see where this goes. And it blew me out of the water. Like, from episode 1 to the ending, I was just blown away by where, like the moment where it's like, oh, the LARPing. I'm like, Clint's not going to do the LARPing. He's going to figure out something to get around. It's like, no, he gets into it. And it's like, they're having, and it's like, oh, Clint doesn't have to save the world. He's just trying to help himself out and help out this kid. So he can take moments like this.
Yeah. It's a fun, low stakes story compared to the shit that he's been doing. Like him having those jokes of like, I fought Thanos, like, and now he's having to deal with LARPers. There's like a wonderful humor in that. Are you, have you read the Matt Fraction run that like a lot of this is like pulling from?
No, I've never read it, but like I've seen enough panels on image boards and forums to like, I know the gist of it. Like, and I know like the quote unquote big spot moments of the comic. Like, I've seen it, like the Rockefeller like skating arena fight and whatnot from the comics, and I think that's in the comics. I want to say that's in the comics.
I don't know. I've not read them either myself. But
sorry, either it's in the comics or I've conflated it in my mind that it was in the comics. Either way, it's an amazing scene. So who cares? No, like I really dug the reality by establishing Clint Barton as Ronin. You basically gave us Batman in the MCU, but like well adjusted, like in dealing with like grief and stuff, but like as an adult.
I would argue more the opposite, because he not well adjusted because he's just straight up murdering people. Versus,
sorry, when I say well adjusted, I meant that he's not dressing up. I'm saying he has not dedicated himself to fighting crime on like a base level where he dresses up like a giant animal and fight and like brutalizes criminals, like to that extent. I mean like the quote unquote insanity of Batman and as like a concept versus by introducing him as Ronin, we now know that, oh, he is not just the bow guy. He is a full on like peak, like, but I about to say peak human condition, but he's not.
No,
because he's older. Like they do such a great job of balancing the like I'm too old for this shit with somebody who really has stood on level with, you know, billionaire playboy philanthropists, super soldiers from World War II.
Yeah.
Like he like the value he brings is in his versatility and what he can do. And getting to see him as a solo effort, I think, really blew me away by the just the extent that he was capable of, like, and it was also just so well written. Everything was so well written. It was so well done, performed. Jeremy Renner continues to be awesome. Sorry, Jeremy, that your social media platform didn't launch very well in 2018 or 2019 or whatever it was. But hey, Hawkeye's great. Haley Steinfeld's phenomenal. I can never remember her name because it's like such a super British name.
The mom, the
who plays Yelena.
Oh, Florence Pugh.
Yeah, thank you. Gosh, that name, Florence Pugh. Yeah, she blew me away in Black Widow, which I had watched just a few hours earlier. Or honestly, I went from Black Widow to just hopping right into episode 5 or episode 6.
Probably episode 5.
Episode 5, yeah. Just hopped right into that, and so it's like, oh, cool. I'm getting to see her character and like her dealing with the snap.
Yeah.
In such a cool way. Of like, also like I love that moment. She's like they get her off of the mind control, and then she goes, "Did you ruin my carpet?" It's like, oh my gosh. And then like the 180, she's like, "Oh yeah, like I'm super like bachelorette, like I'm such a badass, yada yada yada. Like I'm rich, I'm doing this awesome lifestyle." And then 5 years later, she's a mom. Like she's gotten married, she's adopted. Her chic, classy apartment that's like filled with like really expensive things is now like covered in like toy castles and other stuff for her kid.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
I love that.
Everything,
yeah, I love that. That like, because it was yet another like interpretation of the blip and another a presentation of it that we hadn't seen it from somebody's eyes. What, like, how they experienced it. Like, we've seen obviously people come back and stuff like that, but we never saw it like, oh, you were gone and then you just came back in the same spot and the world had changed around you. It was a really cool way of like presenting that idea, compared to the other interpretation we'd seen so far. And of course it makes it that much more tragic because we obviously know what happened to Natasha, like, hours before Yelena came back and stuff.
It's interesting to note, and this is the last episode really, like, it struck me really hard. The fact that this was not like an ordained mission. This is not something where there's gonna, like, nobody knows what happened on that planet except Clint and the Red Skull and Natasha. Like, that's it. They're the only people that know. And for him to come back and just deal with that, and like the reality that, Natasha, who was often like the most overlooked member of, like, perhaps Clint was the most overlooked member of the Avengers, but for it to be Scarlet or Black Widow, Natasha, who like and it's like, oh, and I remember everybody saying, well, it's like, it makes sense that it's her because she doesn't have a family. And she doesn't have anything that she's losing except like, she's going to die and like all that stuff. And then for it to like that turnaround to be like, no, actually, here's a movie of where she like basically like she had a family.
And she had just reconnected with them.
Yeah. And she still decided to place Clint's life and his family above her own and like the opportunity of rejoining and like really living with that reconnected family. And like, that's hard too for Yelena, because it's like, what you're saying is that Natasha put everyone else over like me.
Yeah.
Like she sacrificed, but it's like, no, but at the same time, it's like, no, she sacrificed herself for you because you got blipped. And there's so much about like between watching Black Widow and then watching these last Hawkeye episodes, there is such a recontextualization of what Natasha did, and like the sacrifices that she made, and what like everything that was like that character like now stands for me as like somebody who's like been paying attention for a long time about these characters since Iron Man, and really was like, yeah, the only reason I hadn't seen Black Widow is just because I hadn't gotten around to it yet.
Mm-hmm.
I still haven't seen the Eternals yet either.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, like I was just so far behind on the MCU.
Yeah.
And now that I'm caught up, like it's just like it hits me really a lot harder when I think about like when she chooses, like Natasha's sacrifice is recontextualized through Black Widow and this movie and Hawkeye.
Yeah.
And seeing Hawkeye, like, because it was always like I remember people like, oh, we're like, are they gonna have Hawkeye and Black Widow hook up? And they reveal actually no. Like Nat is the best friend of both Clint and his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Like his kids look up to her as their aunt. Like it's this really like wonderful friendship and this like really amazing platonic relationship that we don't ever really get to see from from characters of opposite genders. Like you don't normally get to see a friendship that's so close they're like siblings, and for one of them not to have like unrequited feelings for the other.
Yeah.
Just pure platonic friendship, and seeing that done and like getting to like having the reflection of looking back and thinking about all of the Avengers films, everything that they went through, and it's like, oh yeah, like Natasha's always looking out for Clint. It's like, yeah, because Clint's her best friend. And there's so much about their friendship now. Like when I go back and I watch the older Avengers films, I don't know, like I'm really interested to see how I feel about it. Like I wonder how the rest of the films, as I rewatch them, the recontextualization that I have now is going to do. And that's something that this show definitely brought to the table, to the point where like I was almost in tears during the fight between Clint and Yelena.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's such an emotional fight where like, oh gosh, it's so good. There's so much that's so good. And I think I'm just like scattering this conversation all around the place.
Mm-hmm. No, I appreciate it.
But it's so good, man.
On that note, one of the things that I saw, I don't remember who it was that I saw kind of tweeting about this, but I love the sentiment behind it of Black Widow and this almost like it's weird how well this serves as an epilogue to Natasha's Black Widow story, despite her not being in it at all, because it gives her the moment in the spotlight that we didn't get in Endgame because everybody was paying attention to Tony's death in Endgame. And Black Widow, the conversation around Black Widow ended up being more around like, oh, well, I mean, like, it's cool that we got this story, but it's also weird where it fell in like production timeline versus like where it fell in the chronology of the Avenger. Like, so, like there was, and knowing that was the send off to the character who had already, died previously or whatever, it was just a weird kind of like beat. Whereas this is our first time like sitting in a world without Natasha, and having to kind of reflect back on what that means, how that impacts the characters in her life. And I think it does kind of add an extra bit of bittersweetness to this story, of Clinton now having to go it alone. And, fortunately he finds Kate and they end up kind of forming this really cool partnership. And it does give Yelena a bit of closure that she will have needed to move on within the MCU as well. I mean, the moment in their fight where Clint does like the special whistle, and
dude,
like,
I almost broke when that happened.
Like she, who would have never thought she was going to hear that again with Natasha dead, like breaks down, and that's what like finally gets her. Like she's Florence Pugh is phenomenal in her like, admittedly small role throughout these episodes, because she plays that perfectly. She plays like the brutality of her as a fighter, but then she also plays the humor and like her scenes with Kate, both in the like in Kate's loft as well as like in the elevator, are just like flawless fun. And I can't wait to see like those two team up in a future thing.
They should. Oh my gosh, it was so amazing. Yelena, definitely a massive highlight for me. In and honestly, like stole the show for me in Black Widow. Just her selling like Black Widow. I tweeted out about it when I watched it. I was like, "Oh, cool, a fun family spy romp. I'm excited for this." And then like after the first 15 minutes, it's just like trauma.
Yep.
Like the trauma inducement of the first 15 minutes of Black Widow is intense. And for that to be like the reality of this young woman who like her introduction's fantastic, but I really came to love and appreciate her character in those moments with Kate in the loft. You want macaroni? Like I know what boxed macaroni cheese tastes like.
Delicious.
It's freaking delicious.
Yeah.
Like it's so good because it's like, oh, is Kate gonna be like, I know what it's like, and then she's like, I know what it's like. It's delicious. You're like, yeah. It's like you want to like, oh my gosh, when she just slams her for her silverware, which like as a like person who's lived on my own, who's like, do I need more than one fork?
Yeah.
Like lifestyle. Like 100%. Like I like felt the shade coming from Yelena, but she holds up like the plastic like rest like takeout stuff. She goes, "This is not cutlery."
Yeah,
and it's like, oh my gosh, Yelena's so freaking good. I love her. I like, yes, she is the new Black Widow. Put her in everything. Please do so. I love her. But on top of that, also her action scenes are phenomenal. Also she just like looks incredible and like she's like got that green jacket, that jade green jacket over her tactical outfit. And she walks past and he goes, "Can I take your coat?" "No, you may not."
Yeah.
And just like owns it. And it's like, she's such a powerful person on screen. It's like, well, obviously anybody who's seen Little Women knows this. Gosh, but she's just absolutely phenomenal. I was blown away by her in Hawkeye. But just, yeah, those moments of, and it's interesting because we talked about Spider-Man No Way Home as a spoiler cast, so I won't get into it because it's still really new. But when I talked about in Spider-Man Homecoming, kind of this absentee, like the lack of a character not being there, making that character be there in a way. Like Uncle Ben, like nobody mentions Uncle Ben, but there is a presence hanging over the Parker household that is like that specter of Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
And in that same way, like, yeah, he talks about Nat, and it's like, yeah, I miss Nat, yada yada. It's kind of like an inverse of that same principle of where they mention this character, and it could be just like, oh, they mentioned this character, it's important. But especially, I think also it comes into the fact, like, I watched these back to back. So it's extremely fresh in my mind. When I start watching it, the absence of Natasha in Yelena's life is palpable. And when she's fighting Clint and she wants to, like, she's like, "You're going to tell me what happened to my sister." Their fight feels like there's another character there in that moment. And it's Natasha. It's this idea of like, Natasha was a spy. You can't really say like, well, this is what Natasha stood for, because she was adaptable and she stood for a lot of things. And a lot of times that was really ambiguous. And a lot of times it wasn't standing for the right things, a la blowing up a child. Like, there's that aspect of like, what is Natasha's legacy? Because Iron Man's legacy is his daughter. It's this idea of this hero being larger than life, this Iron Man who saved the world with a snap of his fingers, like very Tony Stark-esque. The legacy of Captain America as like divulged and gone through in Falcon and Winter Soldier. And I love that we're dealing with the legacy of like the
I mean, even the Rogers the Musical is the Broadwayification of these characters' legacy.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like in that musical, Hawkeye's a like ancillary character who's just like sent off to do something, and he's not like front and center like with like Steve and Tony, and even Natasha. Natasha has like a like Yeah, she's there as well. And she's not there as well. She's like a main role in that, like when the superheroes show up.
I mean, I would argue in the number that we get in its entirety, none of the Avengers are a main character.
That's accurate.
In that number.
That is accurate.
Like
that is accurate.
They're all just kind of like, obviously the show is called Rogers the Musical, so it's presumably Steve Rogers is your primary character in there, and then everybody else is just kind of like along for the ride, I imagine. Like that number strikes me as like, oh, that's the act 1, like, you know, that's the finish, and then act 2 comes back and we get the whole rest of the saga. But yeah, anyway,
it's just, for me, like when you're asking about the legacy of a character that is who was a secondary character in everybody else's movie, how do you not only tell this, like talk about this character's legacy, and they did it by showing that Natasha's legacy wasn't by being part of an institution, it wasn't by being an example, it was by the people that she connected with, and the people that she loved, and the people that she chose to give her life for, and the people that she chose to consider precious to her.
Mm-hmm.
In the way, like, and that's what settles the fight between Yelena and Clint. Is it's like we're both people that Natasha loved and gave her life for, and that moment when he takes out his earpiece in episode 5 and like has that
basically
moment where it's just
apologizes to Natasha.
Apologizes to her because he's putting on Ronin one more time, and he's doing it to try to save this girl at the same time, and it's just so damn good. He's almost in tears as he's like apologizing, because he's like, you know, it does such a great job of, as a eulogy of Black Widow, of, you know, Natasha Romanoff, the spy character who was a secondary character in most films, but gosh, I don't know, like when she had her
saying that, like she got so much more of a spotlight over the course of the MCU than Hawkeye ever did. So the fact that even this movie, like even Hawkeye's show, still gives her a lot of deference over his own stuff is a whole extra interesting layer of things. She had, you know, she gets introduced in Iron Man 2. She had a great back and forth with Cap in Winter Soldier. She has the relationship with Bruce Banner in Age of Ultron.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was like a key figure in Civil War and Infinity War. And Clint is retired by the time Civil War rolls around, but he comes out of retirement for that fight. Then he's basically in the raft and not present in Infinity War at all. Like we're getting time with Clint, but we're also getting like, as Clint would need to do to say goodbye to Natasha.
Which is great, because I think their characters are so interesting. Clint's character is so intrinsically tied to Natasha's character through their friendship, and also the fact that, like, she was the one who said, we can't kill Clint in Avengers. We have to figure out a way to save them and the rest of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, there is once again, it's this showing of this platonic friendship, and it's like, yeah, this would happen with these characters who are so close to each other. If one of them literally sacrifices their soul. Like, if there's a heaven, Natasha's not going there. Her soul was turned into a stone. And oh my gosh, you gave up everything for a stupid rock.
Yeah.
Like, so good. Like, it's so great in that, like, on that level. And Hawkeye is just, and we've been talking about this kind of like idea of legacy and whatnot, but to get back to the actual like meat and potatoes of this show, not just the themes and kind of like, and kind of like the meta meta questions around, or like not questions, but like ideas around the show. Go back into like actual meat and potatoes of the show. It is like the action's fantastic. The characters are all amazing. I like from the moment her like Kate's mom fights with Armand in the first episode, I was like, she's a baddie.
Mm-hmm.
And the show spent so much time trying to convince me otherwise. And by the very end of it, I almost believed her. But then Jack got arrested. And I was like, there's no way Jack's behind this.
Mm-hmm.
One, He's Jack. Jack is just like Jack is amazing.
What? No.
I love his character. What? No, it wasn't me. I've never worked a day in my life. Like Armand like tries to like shit on him in episode 1, and Jack just goes, "Fuck you, I don't care." Like he's such a oh my gosh when he interacts with his nephew.
Yeah, he's like, "You do you remember when you pooped yourself at at St. Bart's or whatever? I do. I remember."
Everybody remembers.
Everybody remembers. Yeah.
Like this little kid tries to give him shit, and so he just like points out that he's a little shitty kid,
Mm-hmm.
and like just rubs his nose in it, and it's fantastic. He's wearing he's accused of murdering his uncle with a sword, so he shows up to his fiance's Christmas party wearing a sword at his side.
And Clint has that great line, "Weird flex, but okay."
Yeah, weird flex, but okay. Like such a great moment. Episode 6 is just like perfect for me. Like I look at that episode as being perfect between the kind of like Die Hard Christmas party mixed with
a little bit of Home Alone, the trick arrows, all the trick arrow joy. Like I tweeted out basically my reaction to watching the episode kind of the night of was that the finale gave me the biggest like guttural laugh I've had in a long time, and that was the 1-2 punch of the Pym arrow shrinking down the
baby owl.
Bros band, and then being like, so what do we do now? I don't know. I guess I'll have to ask Scott about that. And then the owl that got introduced comes in, grabs them, and flies away. It's like, well, there's that. I just laughed so hard, and I've gone back and rewatched that scene like 2 or 3 times just to brighten my hours.
I think that really is the crux of it. It's the action, the drama, and the comedy in this are just top tier Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
It's some of the best Marvel's ever done, especially as far as action goes. I think this is like super up there, especially for the television shows. For the television stuff, this has been incredible versus the pseudo super soldiers of Falcon and Winter Soldier, those fights being basically just like one-sided things until the heroes get the upper hand. This one being like true back and forth. The fight between Yelena and Kate through the offices is a brilliant mix of comedy and action in the best ways possible.
Yeah.
And it shows that, Yelena can kill Kate at any moment, but don't count Kate out because she can definitely take an upper hand multiple times throughout that fight. And it's just, oh my gosh. And when Yelena just goes, like, says goodbye to her and then, like, does the grappling thing, like the Black Widow, like, fall out the window. And then Kate with the bolas to rappel down. So fantastic. So fantastic. It's just everything about it is about this show is just really extremely good. And the fact that we get Vincent D'Onofrio coming back as Kingpin is so good because I think he's the best Kingpin we've ever had on screen. Shout out though to Michael Clark Duncan, an incredible actor in his own right, but just in a bad Daredevil movie.
I also am I'm biased obviously because of how much I love Spider-Verse, but also I think Liev Schreiber does a great job as Kingpin in Spider-Verse.
As the voice of him, for sure.
Yeah.
But there's so much about like an actual physical presence that you have to have because otherwise Kingpin's just a crime boss. You need to have these moments of the soft spoken danger that is Kingpin. Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin as this neurotic, like, criminal, like he's more than a thug, but he's not a supervillain level that he's at as a villain, is fantastic. And I think it's just so well done. This character that's just insulated. And I love that Kate's the one that kind of like, quote unquote, takes him down. And she does it in like an awesome way.
Yeah. Pays off the coin trick that Clint taught her. Pays off the too dangerous arrow that turns out it was just a giant explosion, but also just even a giant explosion only just barely knocks out Kingpin. Like this also compared to the Daredevil episodes, obviously this sets up a much more like superhuman version of Kingpin compared to I think what we got in the other stuff.
I would say,
I mean, like he gets shot basically point blank by an arrow to the chest, and he just kind of like whacks it off with his cane.
So if you're not as intricately remembering Daredevil, the end of Daredevil.
I never watched. I don't think I ever watched season 3, so I don't know what.
No. This is season 1 stuff, like season 1 and 2 stuff.
I mean, I also have not thought about or watched a lot of that.
That's fine. I did think about it because I was like, how did he survive an arrow to the chest? And then I realized it's his suit. People forget Kingpin suits are like they are specially designed to basically be body armor.
Mm.
Like basically it's stronger than Kevlar. Like his suits are like Daredevil's suit. That's like his super suit in the MC show on Netflix. When he's there in that it shows there's an entire arc about Daredevil helping out the guy who makes it.
Gotcha.
And so as a favor, he pays him back by basically the suiting up of like the Daredevil proper suit in the Daredevil MCU show on Netflix is him getting to like the same quote unquote level of Kingpin when it comes to armor and stuff.
Yeah.
And so like he can take a knife like head on and the knife won't go through his suit. So and don't get me wrong, I know he's wearing a Tommy Bahama shirt.
Mm-hmm.
But I guarantee you that Tommy Bahama shirt has been reinforced in some way. And he is freakishly strong. Like they talk about that a lot in the Daredevil show. Like you look at him and you just think, oh, he's a big guy. He is freakishly strong. He can tear a door off, like a car door off the car. Like and that's not like, oh, they powered him up for this. No, that's his base level. And like, that's what like Daredevil was dealing with. And so for Kate Bishop to show up and once again, using guile and wit, the Hawkeye method of guile and wit that we've been shown throughout this entire season. She does the coin trick and it's awesome. And it's like, oh, barely knocked him out. It's like, yeah, because he's wearing one of those suits, man. Those suits are badass.
Yeah. And then, we'll see like the tease for the Echo series, obviously, like Maya coming back and being more on the side of good now, like the revelations from Ronan. She of course has her tragic ending with Kazi, and then also with Kingpin, but the shot happens off screen, so I'll believe Kingpin's dead when I see it.
What if I told you his suit can take a bullet and he'll be fine?
Well, she's pointed at his head, and I believe in the comics she shoots him and he's blinded by it. He survives, but he becomes blinded. Which adds a whole other layer to him and Daredevil. I mean, like the fact that he obviously like Daredevil and Echo being like his like a couple of his big key villains. It's like, I'm not really a fan of his views on accessibility.
Actually, I think he's a great equalizer when it comes to accessibility.
I mean,
because he believes he should be beating the shit out of anybody, regardless of their disability.
Yeah.
But he's a true like he believes in true equality, which is get in his way and he'll run you over like a fucking freight train, no matter who you are.
Yeah.
I actually like that because he's the uncle from that earlier episode.
Yep.
He's the uncle, and it's I love that theory paid off. Like that thought, people were like, is it Kingpin? And it's like, maybe it is Kingpin. Like it could be. And it's like, but who did they cast? I'm like, man, it would be amazing if they brought back Vincent D'Onofrio. And they did. Mm-hmm. And I flipped out. I was so happy because he's just so great for the role. And on top of that, like him, when he talks to Maya, especially at the last episode, when he says, I love you, that's genuine. Like he does love Maya. Mm-hmm. He cares about her so much. But this is
he's
who
also
Kingpin
just
is.
A twisted, warped person that loves her and is also going to use her.
But then as soon as it becomes like she's no longer in his pocket completely, the moment that there's a possibility that she's not in his pocket, he's willing to cut her off and kill her, because that's like, he is that ruthless. Like the levels of ruthlessness that Kingpin goes through in the comics is beyond the pale.
Yeah.
Like it like the ruthlessness and especially the bitterness and the like his own feelings of inadequacy are, and especially in the comics, are to insane levels of like twisted and messed up. And that's just like in the comics. In the show, it's not that bad, but I mean, in like the Daredevil show, but it's still really, really bad. Like you'd be like, oh, Cameron, what do you mean? This is like as bad as it gets. It's like, no. The comics, it gets way worse in the comics. There is nothing Kingpin will not do to get revenge. And so if Maya blinds him, as she does in the comics, I'm really curious about what her show is going to be about, because if Kingpin survives, he will come after her with a, like, regardless, like, and he'll still love her. Like, that's the weird thing, twisted thing about Kingpin is, like, he's not a sociopath. Like, he does love people. He does care about people. But he's such a narcissist that the moment you're not with him 100%, you're against him. And he will cut you down. Not cut you off, cut you down. He will bring you down and destroy you.
Yeah.
And will go to any lengths to do so. Because that's just who Kingpin is as a character. And that's one of the reasons why I think Vincent D'Onofrio is so fantastic, because this is a character who, like, especially if you've watched those seasons of Daredevil that he's in, nails that 1000%.
Yeah.
So good.
Do you think we will get more Hawkeye, i.e. a season 2, or, you know, more, I guess, do you think we'll get more Kate and Clint team up?
I don't know. Just because Jeremy Renner is at such an age where, like, the jokes about his age and like his body breaking down are one thing, but those jokes do come with like an actual like physical toll. Like, he is getting older. I hope so. Like, that's really what it comes down to. I really hope so.
Yeah.
Hawkeye was so freaking good, but without an immediate confirmation, like, it's only been a couple of days, I know. So who knows what's going to come out in the next week or so, but I hope so. I loved it. I would, because here's the thing, you could easily do an entire season where Kate's trying to fit into the family and is struggling, especially because Kate's not that much older than Clint's daughter. And Clint's daughter is gonna want to be like, she's she's his like sidekick in the family. So
I did not like, I read it as she's there for Christmas. I'm not reading. She's not gonna be like in the family now or anything like that.
Where's she gonna go?
I'm like, she'll go out and do the vigilante life or whatever.
Maybe that would be one thing. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I could definitely see that as like a season 2.
Or she'll go team up with Yelena, join the.
That'd be
I mean,
cool. I'd be
like,
cool with that.
A lot of the shows have obviously been like teeing up the Young Avengers or something like that.
Yeah,
so
that's true. This next generation, you did, like, honestly, they've done an amazing job of introducing the next generation of these heroes.
Yeah.
So Kate's perfect for that. I could totally see like that being the case. I don't know. I kind of took it as like a, hey, your mom just got arrested. All the family assets are definitely going to be frozen while the FBI investigates.
Yeah, right.
Because like, without a doubt, like, your mom was into like some super shady crap. And she'll probably die in prison because she'll backstab Kingpin with all the records, the copies of all the records she has, to try to get a better deal. And that'll definitely lead to her death. Which will fuel Kate as like wanting revenge. Show up in the Echo show. Yeah. Like, there's a lot of possibilities of where Kate Bishop could go. I don't know how much farther Clint Barton has to go.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
I mean, he's been trying to retire to that farm with his family since Age of Ultron, so be nice to let him just finally do that.
And honestly, it's not a bad, like, Jeremy Renner's care. Like, I love it, but also like Clint Barton's in his like 50s in the show,
probably,
or 40s, definitely his 40s, yeah, late 40s. Yeah, because like, yeah, he was a like, it's interesting to think about where he's come from since Thor. I love it.
I mean, and well, like a lot of what this show kind of explores is that before Thor, before he was an Avenger, he was a SHIELD agent for years and years and years. So like,
and he did wet work. He was an assassin.
Yeah. So
he was literally sent to kill Natasha. That's how they met.
Yeah. So, he's been in that life for a long time, and I think, he'll be quite happy to be out of it. But yeah.
Also, massive shout out to the earpiece. Not the earpiece, sorry, the hearing aid. that has just been such a like it's such a great narrative tool, because you get to have moments like when he's like apologizing to Natasha in front of like the Avengers Memorial there, when he in the fight it gets crushed, and he can't hear, and he has to try to like explain to Nate like, yeah, I'm still gonna try to be home for Christmas, and that's when Kate steps in and helps him out. Like, there's so many awesome things that happen because of like just small narrative pieces. The LARP thing could have been a one and done thing.
Yeah.
But then they bring them back and they go through that. And when Clint reveals that he's wearing a matching outfit to Kate, it's fantastic.
Yeah. She's so stoked.
She's so stoked. Just so great. Like, there's just so much great things that happen in the show. For me, it's a full on like we'll get into the grading soon, but like it's up there for me.
Yeah.
This might be the best MCU show on Disney Plus. And actually, it might be the best MCU series of all time. It's that it's at that level for me.
Yeah.
Then again, I should preface, I like Jeremy Renner before he was cast as like Hawkeye years ago. He was in a TV procedural show that only lasted one season. That was really good. As a cop who also owned a diner and lived above it. It's not, realistically, it's not that phenomenal of a show. It's but it was really good. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, he was in that, and then, you know, that got canceled, and then next time I saw him, he was a Hawkeye. So I've been a big fan of him since then. If you do not like Jeremy Renner, because I know some people don't like Jeremy Renner, this show is definitely not for you. Don't watch it. That's about it.
I mean, I think those people could still enjoy it. He gets beat up a lot, and is the butt of the joke
but he looks
a
super
lot.
hot doing it, though.
Okay. But I also think there's still enough other elements to enjoy, even if you don't like Jeremy Renner. That we spent a good chunk of time gushing over Haley Steinfeld, Florence Pugh, Maya Cox. Is it Maya Cox? No, it's Alaqua Cox. Maya being her character name.
Oh, and I do have to say, honestly, like, what really would have made the ending even better, like the ending just a smidge better, is if Jack also came home for Christmas with the Bartons.
Jack Duquesne.
They ended up having like.
They were. I mean,
I'm really sad because he's her mom's fiance, and it turns out he's just like a quirky, dumb, like quirky kind of doofusy dude, but he's also like an excellent swordsman.
Yeah.
Like, I love that. Like, I love that it's like he's an idiot and dumb about everything except swordsmanship. That's it. That's the only redeeming quality about him. But he's also sweet and kind and nice and generous. And Kate has the apprehension in the beginning because he like, evil stepdad syndrome, like evil step parent, like tropes. But Jack Duquesne is just so phenomenal. I would have loved it to been like, oh, Kate's there, awesome, and then all of a sudden, like Lucky runs off, and the person who goes to get Lucky is Jack. Like, that would have been great. A little bit of that.
I mean, that's weird. No, I'm not. I can't get with you on that. I think that's
fair.
That would
fair.
not have.
I think
that
I like
would not
Jack
have
Duquesne a lot more than other
gelled with
people.
Kate or Clint's characters at all if Jack just showed up.
No, not showed up. Like, he was like always a part of that. Like, he also got out of the car with them.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, it would not. That would not have gelled
They fought
with
together
either
at
of
the
their
end.
characters.
They fought together at the end. It was great.
They were doing their own fights, and he also fought bros. Like,
well, he fought bros to protect Kate.
Kind of briefly. Like, no, it's still not enough to justify.
Is it wrong that I just want Kate to still have a parent in her life that that cares about her?
Yeah, you clearly don't understand how Marvel characters work at all. Anyway, let's dive in.
I like Jack. That's my thing. I like Jack.
I mean, I like him fine. And, you know, if he pops up in other things here and there, cool. But he's not going to be part of Kate's, you know, like, Kate has no reason to really side with him apart from now they've both been, you know, dicked around by her mom. But yeah, no.
And their last interaction was extremely positive.
I mean, it was fine. It was
extremely positive.
It was fine.
I just watched it like 12 hours ago. It was great.
I mean, I probably did too. It was fine. Let's grade the thing. Hawkeye season 1, scale from A+ to F. What do you want to give Hawkeye season 1?
I think it's an A+. I think it's just absolutely stellar.
Yeah.
I could not have been happier with what we got. Like the Jack thing at the end was just kind of like an aside thing that I just thought of, but like that, like it is to me like just an excellent example of that the MCU can do and the kind of stories that the MCU can tell and what the MCU can take from comics, bring into the live action, and in a lot of ways make better.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
just absolutely loved what we got and couldn't be happier.
Yeah, I think I'm there with you. I think like A+. I think it really nails these characters. I think every casting across the board was great. I think the chemistry that everybody had was really great. I loved the introduction to new characters that I didn't know, that I wasn't really familiar with in kind of their like, I mean, I love that they leaned into the absurdity of some of those things, like the tracksuit mafia. I love the humor, obviously, and the action was it was a lot of fun, and the you know the hints of Die Hard and Home Alone and other like Christmas themed action and fun and joy around that was a lot of fun as well. And yeah, I enjoyed it all around. Looking forward to kind of revisiting it in the years to come. In the grand scheme of like the MCU shows, I think I'd have to rewatch it, but like in my mind, I think I like WandaVision a little bit more.
That's right.
But I think like enough of that is also like I love from a production standpoint the amount of work that went into recreating those older genres of television that I grew up watching on Nick at Night and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like getting to see that done so faithfully in the writing, in the production, and in the performances from kind of all involved was just so much fun that just from a pure creative standpoint, WandaVision really stood out in that regard. But this, I think, is also, a stellar showcase. And then also I really like Loki too. So, by and large, the shows have been really hitting for me. And I think I just enjoy, they don't suffer the Netflix issue that so many shows had of like running a couple episodes too long for the story they were telling. So some of them feel, padded, fleshed out. The fact that so many of these are just kind of like 6 episodes and we're done or whatever, has been like they had a story to tell and they told the story. And there's not like a ton of fat that needs to get cut out of these things. So
I also think that there is a level of production value that gets brought to these shows.
Mm-hmm.
That, especially this one I think had extremely great production. I just think like it was just stellar. Yep. Just so stellar.
Yep. So yeah, A+ from both of us. Extra credit if you like this one. You can go watch Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision, Marvel Studio Legends, What If, Loki, Avengers Endgame, and Avengers Infinity War. Extracurriculars, what else are you watching on Disney Plus? Cam, you mentioned Black Widow. Overall, what'd you think of Black Widow?
Really, really good. I think that there are some definite weak points to it. I think it suffers third act syndrome of the superhero genre.
Mm-hmm.
Not just Marvel films, but the entire genre as a whole. Like the third acts usually suffer. I think it definitely had that. It didn't have the Taskmaster that I'm like the Taskmaster we got. I miss the task. Like I'm sad we're not getting it, or maybe we will get it someday. But the Taskmaster that I want, which is the one from the comics, where it is kind of like a more mercenary type guy, versus the kind of like human robot that we get with Black Widow. But I think it's pretty good. Like it's really good. In the places it's good, it's great. In the places where it's not good, it's like real meh.
Mm-hmm.
So, all
right.
It has one of like a really cool fight scene though, like in the third act with the like paneling as they're like going through the sky.
Yeah.
The green screen was I'm sure some people more people with a better eye for special effects will be sure to tell me that I'm wrong. But I just thought that was just like one of the coolest fight scenes we've ever seen. So
cool. I will shout out Ron's Gone Wrong, which is on Disney Plus. A little animated movie featuring, I believe, Zach Galifianakis as a like helper robot that has a little bit of a coding issue or something like that. It's a very interesting kind of take on like Facebook slash Google slash the future of like social media or whatever, as well as what that effect is on kids and younger generations of like making friends with other people versus making friends with what the algorithm tells you to make friends with or something like that. It's an interesting little thing, and it's out there on Disney Plus. So go check it out. Thought it had a cute little story behind it, and some real fun moments, and some very clear but I think well pointed commentaries. But yeah, that is gonna do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, Cam, for joining me to talk about Hawkeye Season 1. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
I want to give a shout out not to what we have out right now, but what will be coming in the next few weeks. It's the end of the year. That means it's Game of the Year. We are in our final push towards trying to cover as much as we possibly can for what will eventually be our end of the year lists and podcasts that we'll be doing. I want to give a massive shout out to everybody who does one of these. It's a lot of work, but I look forward to ours when they come out in the new year. So
there you go. You follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will echo that shout out. It's something I was going through my list of games last night, trying to figure out like the ones that are going to kind of like make my preliminary cut, because I typically do like a top 20 myself for the year. So I was like eyeballing which of those before diving into the proper ranking and stuff. And then I played enough this year that I'll probably also have like here's my favorite like revisited games this year and my favorite games that I played this year that didn't come out this year lists. So looking forward to doing all of that. And then, when I imagine we will be doing what we did last year, which will be like a big old you, me, Frank, and Logan going around with our top 10s and just kind of coming up with what the biggest games of the year were for us, that kind of will coalesce into the That Nerdy Site's Game of the Year lists. So very cool. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us, or to keep an eye out for that Game of the Year conversation when it comes. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with friends, all that fun stuff. As I mentioned at the top, next week will be the Book of Boba Fett. The first episode, or maybe two, will be coming out next week. So much like we did with Hawkeye a month ago, we will kind of be doing the same thing with Book of Boba Fett to wrap up our holiday month here on That D Plus Show. Happy holidays to everybody. Obviously, this is coming out on Christmas Eve, so hope you have a safe and happy holidays. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed.